I'm going to start with Dr. Sherman. Could you please explain the current state of medical cannabis research in Mississippi and how it may compare to other states that are in similar boats that are trying to start some clinical research on the effects of medical cannabis?
Sure, absolutely. Thank you for asking. So the Mississippi State Department of Health has asked me and NCCRE to look at different studies that are out there for different indications for medical cannabis, specifically for people that are asking for different indications. So from what I understand, we are probably one of the only states that actually has a connection with the Mississippi Department of Health or with the Department of Health in their respective states for looking at such research.
Interesting. So we're at the forefront, and we could, make some precedent here in Mississippi. We could finally be first in something instead of last in something.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
First in cannabis, Mississippi.
So, Tatum.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges in procuring and ensuring compliance for medical cannabis and medical cannabis products here in Mississippi?
Well, this is a two-pronged question for me. The challenges to procurement are always availability and limited supply. A lot of people don't realize that cannabis isn't like a pallet of Coca-Cola Classic. You can't just order it whenever you need it and it's there the next day. So that really is, I guess, the general challenge in procurement. With compliance, it's the details. All of these labels have to be specific. A lot of times human error gets involved. There's copy and pasting involved, and as a dispensary, it's our job on the receipt to catch all of those things, like the labels, the seals, child safety, and then eventually it's the COA and access to the COA. So there's QR codes on the labels that give patients that access to the COA so they can see for themselves how safe this product is. And at Root Down, we have a multitude of systems in place. We do daily audits at the point of sale or at the bud bays. We have a system called PANTS, where we look at the product name and the category, the amounts, quantities, 3.5s to 7s, the number of 3.5s or 7s, the total cost or discounts that may apply, and then we show all of that to the patient before they're issued their product, so they are aware of exactly what they've got and the compliance involved.
Sure. In your opinion, as somebody that purchases a lot of cannabis here in the state of Mississippi, on behalf of Root Down,
yes.
Would you say that the current regulations and laws surrounding compliance for packaging and labeling are ensuring public health and safety? Are they overburdensome at some level? Are there things that you would change to help improve the program and improve procurement?
I think the improvement is just going to come with regularity and acceptance of what is needed. Nobody's interested in a medication that they don't know about. And
Absolutely.
I think that goes all the way up.
Absolutely. Callie, how does the National Center for Cannabis Research and Education contribute to advancing our understanding of medical cannabis?
Yeah, so I think we're doing some really awesome work in NCCRE. We're kind of taking different prongs of our approach to the research and the education. So on the education piece, we're doing things similar like what we're doing here tonight. We're also spearheading a lot of medical cannabis CME events for some of our practitioners, trying to get the information out to them. Dr. Sherman has joined us for a couple of those. He's really great on the diabetic neuropathy angle and utilizing cannabis. So really kind of getting some of that specific condition education. In addition to that, also researching some of these different conditions, and then also the petitions for the addition of debilitating conditions. And even beyond what we get petitions for, constantly looking for information that's incoming about therapeutic use of cannabis for new and different disorders that may or may not be part of what's approved in Mississippi. I'm trying to think beyond that. We're also about to start something I am super pumped about. We are going to be starting our very first patient study, the real world outcome study. So be keeping an eye out. If you see something, a flyer that's saying if you're a Mississippi cannabis patient, sign up for this research program. It's $100. It's real. It's legitimate. I think our first study is going to be about 300 patients, but we do anticipate doing a lot of these in perpetuity, studying different cross sections of patients, whether it's different age groups, different demographics, maybe a different subset of conditions. And so we'll be having a lot of that happening. And then finally, we have our SORIA program, which is the Cannabis Science Research Education Alliance grants, which is within the University of Mississippi School of Pharmacy. We actually open it up and allow our cannabis experts, postdoc students to apply for sub-grants. We have some really interesting ones. We've got one studying cannabis as a specific indication to treat substance use disorder, similar to kind of like Suboxone, Subutex. We're studying the potential for cannabis to do that. We're studying drug-drug interactions, specifically cannabis and antidepressant use. We're studying the biphasic effects of cannabis when you mix it with opioids, and if there's any sort of impact on the efficacy of either one there. What am I leaving out?
I can't think of.
We're doing a lot of things.
Sounds like it.
We're doing lots of things, and we're really excited about it. And Dr. Sherman, he's really integral into a lot of that, particularly the review of the conditions. So.
This might be an unanswerable question, but how can patients, industry participants, members of the public support and follow what you guys are doing there at the NCCRE? Are you guys keeping us informed on where the research is headed, what we're working on? I think a lot of the people here in the audience, and especially in the industry, are very interested in what you guys have going on there.
Yeah.
There's a way that we can follow. I mean, obviously you and I try and keep up with it as much as I can, but if there's somebody in the audience, there's a website, or if y'all have a Facebook page or something that y'all are doing, shout that out.
So yes, I'm really actually glad you mentioned that. So probably one of the best ways to keep up with what we're doing is through our social media. Right now we have Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, and X. We have an amazing communications team. It's Red Window Marketing. They are constantly highlighting new and growth things. They're sharing information from other events, other parts of this industry, relevant information. Also, the Senate bill that established the Medical Cannabis Research Program at the University of Mississippi last year does challenge us to create a repository for medical cannabis information. So as we find more research, as we develop materials, education things, we are going to actually have a repository on the NCCR website where people will be able to come and access that information. We're also working on building an educational module for our bud tenders, or wellness advisors.
Wellness advisors.
I like that term. It sounds so good.
Yeah,
so we're going to
absolutely.
be doing a lot, but yeah, social media is definitely going to be one of the best ways to keep up with what we're doing right now.
And it's just the NCCRE,
Yep, National Center for Cannabis Research and Education.
Cool. I'll definitely give it a follow. So Diesel, with your extensive experience in the cannabis industry, how has the landscape changed for medical marijuana patients over the years?
So it started legally in '96, and California was the first state to do legal marijuana medically. Alaska was decriminalized, but really it started with California. When marijuana started, you pretty much only smoked it. Dispensaries did very, very little edibles in the beginning, and we saw pretty much a 90+% smokable market, flower or pre-rolls, and less than 10% of anything else. Now that cannabis has developed more and more, and we understand the science practice of cannabis, extraction, etc., we see that it's other consumables that are growing. In our market right now, we're probably closer to 50-50 here. So 50 being flower, pre-roll smokables, and the other 50 cent, even if it's a smokable, it's really a vape.
We are closer to 50-50. I think it's actually 62% of the total sales is flower or pre-rolls, and the other 38% is...
Understood. We're going to see that extraction forms of the product grow in number because more people are getting introduced to cannabis who never smoked. Therefore, they don't choose to smoke cannabis either. And so people are doing edibles, tinctures, drinks, and vape carts. And I think we'll continue to see the extraction grow.
David, as a prescribing practitioner, what are the most common conditions you see patients seeking medical cannabis for here in Mississippi?
So, good question. We have a primary care practice on top of this, so we kind of see a lot. usual day-to-day basis. But your typical patient, and everybody's a little bit different, is usually about 45 and above on our demographic, and has some chronic pain pieces to it, whether that be joints, backs, hips, and it could be in between it. Now, that doesn't mean we don't mix in the occasional PTSD, or you see some rare other things such as Huntington's disease or vice versa. So there's a lot of cross there, but majority of it is joint-based in some way, shape, or form. Now, like I said, we go into it, we try to get back A to B to C and saying, hey, look, these are medicines you're on, this is what you got in front of you. Well, Bob, you know, hey, that knee, that's pretty bad off. I was like, we're gonna be able to fix this a little bit, but you might still need that replacement. So the expectations are there, that they know kind of what they're getting into. But the majority of it is usually chronic pain-based, which is what you end up seeing on there as well. The majority of the cards go into it. Not to say there aren't other conditions meeting in there, but
Would you say that there are conditions that are glaringly not currently under the list of qualifying conditions that you would think that
Hands
you
down.
get commonly asked about?
hands down. So we field the majority of the calls. We try to call everybody back. We try to text everybody back as much as we can. Now, that within reason, of course. But the majority of the calls stem to, in the beginning, one, anxiety, depression, insomnia being wanting that for that, going to the cannabis use to it. That's where the majority of the calls go that we can't fulfill. Now, that being said, getting into it though, the anxiety and depression is not listed, so therefore we kind of have to tell them about that, and but they're tied in to whether it be that chronic pain piece because they can't sleep, and when you can't sleep, guess what happens? My anxiety goes up, and vice versa.
Right.
We do work with some of the pain guys as well to bridge that as well across. So you want to work all together. You want to put it all together for the patient as much as you can so they have a good outcome. Because when you have a good outcome, the majority of the patients have a good experience and they show back up and they bring those other patients with them. So the only way to change the perception of the whole thing is to get good outcomes, taking care of the patients, individualize as much as you can, and then getting that stigma off of it. We're in Mississippi, so as I always have a good running joke, I hadn't been yelled at the catfish house in a few months, so that's good. So, but the perception is changing. Even some of the providers that may have had a perception to it that may be not as positive have also kind of warmed up to that as well. When you see that patient with Parkinson's and now he's not as, the tremors have gone down and so forth. So everybody's individual to that.
You mentioned briefly pain doctors, and I know that you have a good relationship with the doctors in your local area.
Yes.
In general, and this I guess is a more general question for anybody else on the panel, is the relationship between pain practitioners, pain doctors, and medical cannabis in Mississippi, is it congruent? Are they collaborative with each other? Or do you see, like in other states, where pain doctors are prone to cutting patients off of their pain medications as a result of them getting a medical cannabis card?
Well, I think from the program aspect to that, the chronic opioid piece, they use the bridge to the cannabis to reduce the opioid dependence. So that's what the program was designed for. That's what they're doing. Majority of them are in that boat. They move that, whether it be that opioid down in as well, cannabis goes up. So while you do that, of course, you kind of see the other good positive effects of this, of less constipation. Hey, everybody wants that. Or, man, my joints feel better today. The stories that aren't told, and I wish could be, are the guys that come in and are on oxycodone 4 times a day. And they've been on it for 20 or 30 years, and they don't know what they don't know until they get off of it, and you see them in the middle of the floor at 72 years old doing push-ups, and this is no joke. I was like, prior back issues, and he comes back in, you're looking at him, you're like, man, you down like 40 pounds? He's like, oh yeah, Dave. He's like, I'm back swimming again. And now, does that happen? I could say, I've had 10, 15 occurrences of that. Constipation
That's
gone.
fantastic.
Is that everybody in that boat? No, but you do see wins like that a lot.
Yeah.
Or a lady who was on several blood pressure medicines, but it's 30, 40 pounds she's off of. Is it intertwined? Yeah, it probably is, because she's now able to get up and move and actually walk, and our diets and everything else. Not that I'm the epitome of anything here, but there's a lot of good benefits that aren't shown.
Sure.
And I wish you could see more of that.
Well, I mean, just like with any other pharmaceutical drug, not every drug's going to work for every patient.
Correct.
Not every medical cannabis product is going to work for every patient, I think. But, hearing stories like that remind you of the power of this drug for certain patients. So that's amazing.